I wrote this phrase on the board: the fortune teller examines the Yong Shen. What does Yong Shen mean? It's like the remedy within Bazi that can solve problems. Everything in the world has its own issues. Personal cultivation is about growing our hearts, striving for enlightenment. Because life is tough for everyone, what Buddha taught is true: life is tough. Buddha achieved enlightenment under the Bodhi tree and then spent 49 years teaching Buddhism. His first teaching was about the Four Noble Truths: suffering, origin, cessation, and the path, the fundamental teachings of Buddhism. At one point, he shared these truths with 5 bhikkhus. When Buddha began his teachings, he talked about his perspective on life and the world, how to see the world, and how to see life. The first thing he mentioned was suffering. Where does all this suffering come from? Why is life considered tough? Well, the basic forms of suffering are birth, getting old, falling ill, and death. Chinese philosophy also acknowledges the suffering that comes with aging, illness, and death. Youth is wonderful, but everyone ages. With aging, life becomes increasingly challenging. People are innocent when it comes to falling ill. Most of the time, it's not their own fault. It's just how it is. When illness strikes and pain surfaces, it hinders many aspects of our lives. We can no longer do the things we used to do, and eventually, we face death. We fear death because we're attached to life and don't want to leave this world. That's why we talk about aging, illness, and death. However, in Chinese culture, we don't consider that birth itself is tough. Buddha says that birth itself is tough. When you're born, you immediately have desires, right? We humans are all about desires. We strive to fulfill and satisfy those desires, and that's when the struggle kicks in. When you actually achieve what you've been longing for, we call it fulfillment, but when things don't go as planned, and if the future you've been dreaming of and working towards goes down the drain, we call it disappointment. Life is just full of troubles. What is cultivation? It's not about gaining something completely new that we never had before. It's more about uncovering and rediscovering what we already have inside us. You know what's great about it? No matter what life throws at you, you can find true joy deep within your heart. Your inner self, your spirit, becomes whole. We humans are flawed and make mistakes in this world. There are so many things that don't go the way we want them to. Some folks grow up in tough environments due to their parents' circumstances. Some struggle in their marriages after tying the knot. Others face all sorts of troubles because of their kids. Like they say, the relationships between fathers and sons are based on debt. When you have a child, you might think it'll bring you happiness, but there are 2 possibilities: either they pay you back for what you've done, or you owe them, and they come to collect. And you know what? It's true what they say: only enemies come together as a couple. So, tell me, which part of life is worry-free? That's just how life rolls. Imagine you're working at a company. Naturally, you want others to respect you. And who do people respect? Those who have status. So, you set your sights on becoming someone with status. But here's the kicker: once you achieve that status, you start feeling like someone else has an even higher status than you. Then, you feel this urge to climb even higher. It's like our basic needs can become a source of trouble when we try to fulfill them. That's why Gautama Buddha said life is suffering. Now, if we want to figure out where suffering comes from, we've got the 4 Noble Truths. The first truth is understanding how suffering arises, its cause. Once we've got a handle on how our troubles arise, we need to get rid of that cause. That's called the cessation. We need to eliminate the factors that lead to suffering and snuff them out. Snuff it out, that cause. Getting rid of the cause of suffering can be done through methods, which we call the path, the way, or cultivation. There's this set of methods for cultivation called suffering, origin, cessation, and path. It's all about tackling the fundamental issue of the clash between life and death. Once you've completely let go of that clash between life and death, what else is there that you can't understand? When you compare most problems to life and death, these problems seem very trivial. Apart from life and death, everything else is small potatoes. Once you grasp the concept of life and death, other things might not bother you as much. Take, for example, people who have faced life-threatening illnesses. They used to stress over all sorts of things in life, but once they made it through, it's like a heavy weight has been lifted, and they see things from a completely different perspective. I've talked to a lot of people about this whole idea of Yuan Qi Xing Kong, dependent origination and emptiness. This phrase seems difficult, and I've gone on and on about it, but basically, it means that everything, including ourselves and our relationships with others, happens because of different causes and conditions. It's all about realizing how everything is connected. We often think that things exist on their own, and we have these ideal standards. For example, when it comes to finding a partner, we are fixated in our search for that perfect husband or wife, but the truth is, finding an ideal partner depends on a bunch of factors. Let's say you have this ideal image of your dream wife. One day, you meet and start dating someone who fits that image. Love at first sight, right? At that moment, she's not your wife yet, she's just your girlfriend. It's only when you get married that you both become husband and wife. Nobody is born as a husband or wife, you become one through your relationship. The same goes for being a father or son, so don't expect your son to be a perfect son to you, and don't expect yourself to be the perfect father. Just appreciate the connection you have. That's what dependent origination is all about. Let's take Mao Zedong's kids as an example. They probably thought their dad was the perfect father, right? What was their relationship like with him? Mao was so caught up in important national matters that he didn't have much time for his kids. His only healthy son, Mao Anying, died in the Korean War. The other son had mental health problems. Plus, Mao Zedong had a daughter named Li Min with his wife He Zizhen, but he favored another daughter, Li Na, more. It's a messy situation. In Mao Zedong's later years, when he was bedridden and couldn't even get up, his eldest daughter Li Min finally got permission to see him. She walked into his room, and there he was, lying in bed. Li Min called out to him, and he looked at her and held her hand tightly. He even remembered Li Min's birthday when she didn't expect him to know, and he asked her why she hadn't visited him in so long. Li Min replied, "Dad, you set the bar too high for me to reach." When she said that, tears welled up in Mao Zedong's eyes. Despite not being the ideal daughter or father, Mao Zedong was, in her mind, the best father she could have. His daughters were proud of him, and he thought highly of his daughters too. The ideal relationship, however, did not exist because Yuan was not present. For his daughters, Mao is not the perfect dad. That's why I bring up this whole idea of dependent origination and emptiness. Parents and kids are connected by karma. When we were young, we couldn't help but think that other people's parents were doing a way better job than ours. I thought my friends' parents seemed so caring and understanding, while my dad was super strict with me. My mom seemed to be constantly mad at me. I never got why she didn't like her own son and favored my sister more. It was something I just couldn't wrap my head around, and I felt like I never had the kind of mom I idealized. Look at how other moms showed love so effortlessly. That kind of thinking lacks wisdom. I thank Buddhism for giving me the wisdom that allows me to come to terms with my situation. No matter what our mother-son relationship was like, my mom and I were just connected by karma, plain and simple. Eventually, I grew to feel grateful toward her because she was the one who made me learn to stand on my own feet, face the world without relying on a mom's warm embrace, and become my own strong person. She had her own good sides too, all part of this karmic connection, I guess. I had held a grudge against my mom for a long time, even after getting married. It definitely took time, but I finally got it. Now, there is not a speck of bitterness in my heart. I realized it was all part of this karmic connection. You know why I aced school? Because when I got home after school, I wasn't allowed to do homework straight away. I had to do a ton of chores such as peeling edamame, enough to fill 5 huge bowls. That took forever. After we all finished dinner, guess who got stuck with dish duty? Yep, me again. Finally, when everything was done, it was already 8 in the evening. At that point, I could finally plop down and do my homework, a kind of privilege or freedom from chores. Homework became my happy place, and I owe it all to my mom. It's a unique way of parenting. I wonder if kids nowadays can handle it. Here's an idea. Torture your kids a bit, and then they'll settle down to study. By torture, I mean just be lazy. Don't do as much around the house. Maybe your kid will become a pro at everything because they can't stand it and start doing things for you. Just don't baby them and do everything for them, or else they'll grow into adults who don't know how to do anything by themselves. Then, you'll blame them for lacking responsibility, but you're one to blame too because you never gave them a chance to step up and do things. When you're sick, you should stay in bed. Let them pamper you with soup, bring you tea, and practice being responsible. As parents, the one-child policy really messed us up. In a family, everyone is hovering around one kid, taking care of their every single need. When parenting, you should not be overly concerned about being unfair to your kid. I mean, deep down, you love them, and that's important. Sometimes you may misjudge or wrongly blame them, and when you realize your mistake, you feel guilty and have to apologize, right? I used to do the same thing with my son, but later I realized how dumb I was. Why? It's important to let your kid experience unfairness at home so they can handle it in the real world. If you shield them from all unfairness, they won't know how to deal with injustice outside. Let's prevent that. I had countless grievances when I was young. Sometimes my dad would come home, and my mom would complain about me, saying all sorts of things. My dad, well, he'd instantly believe it and come after me. It felt like having a wicked stepmother. However, after going through all that, I found that people outside treated me pretty well. I didn't feel any injustice. The younger generation these days doesn't get to experience all that we went through. They don't have the chance. It's not their fault, but we need to be careful not to overprotect and coddle them, which will cause harm. You don't need to set up everything for them. Just give them space and don't micromanage everything they do. Recognize that they're learning and exploring life, getting to know the world. They need to grow on their own with a little bit of hardship, just like in childhood when you learn how to walk through stumbling and falling. You know how Japanese people think it's totally normal for kids to trip and fall, but Chinese parents go into panic mode right away. Audience comment, hahaha. Wang answers, Chinese parents get all worked up. But how can you learn to walk without experiencing stumbling? Audience comment, exactly. Wang answers, Japanese people get it, you know. Audience comments, they don't blame others for their own mistakes. But we even hit the table if our child trips on it. Wang answers, and when these kids grow up, they start blaming everyone else for everything. Audience comments, yes, yes. And doting grandparents conveniently forget how they used to discipline their own kids but treat their grandkids differently. I've actually looked into this. Why are grandparents so nice to their grandkids? It's because they don't have any responsibility. You know what that means? They don't have to be responsible for whether their grandkids are doing well or not, but parents have to be responsible for their own kids. This old saying is called doting grandparents. It's an old saying. Wang answers, in reality, there are two reasons. First, it's a traditional Chinese culture thing where they want to see their great-grandchildren before they pass away. They want to see what comes with the great-grandkids. It's all part of that traditional Chinese culture. The second reason is that when we parents are busy raising our own kids, we're really swamped. It's not that we are short of anything, it's just that we're too busy, and finally, when we retire, we finally have the time. After retiring, we're not Christians or Muslims, so our lives need to have meaning, and we find meaning in reconnecting with our grandchildren. So when we see our grandkids, we don't care about our sons. Audience comment: I was having dinner with a group of friends, about 8 people, and 3 of them couldn't stop talking about their grandkids, how amazing they are. Then this guy, who's 2 years younger than me, got all worked up and said, "You all treat your grandkids better than their fathers." Silence fell. It was dead quiet. Because they treat their grandkids better than their fathers. And then this one guy, a party secretary. He was really emotionally intelligent, and he said, "I'm not staying silent anymore." And then he said, "Well, I haven't even met my grandfather, so let's just forget about it." Wang answers, to summarize our discussion, we talked about how those who examine fate also examine Yong Shen, the remedy or solution for one's problems from their Bazi. Today we have focused on this point. The point is written on the whiteboard behind me. Those who understand fate also understand the shortcoming that comes with it. The Yongshen refers to the remedy for this shortcoming. Every Bazi has its own shortcoming and corresponding remedies. Yes, whether you find these remedies will determine the quality of your destiny. Take myself as an example. My Yongshen is Shangguan, and its main characteristic is the urge to express oneself and showcase talents. This is the passion that I definitely possess, and I won't lie flat, meaning to be idle or unproductive. If you give me an opportunity to showcase my skills, I will speak out and write. Put another way, it is not that if you belong to a certain type of Bazi, you will naturally be passionate about a particular field. It's about finding your Yongshen. Lying flat is not really an option. Don't always think subjective efforts and objective fate are mutually exclusive, they are unified. Your subjective efforts are within your objective fate.